Hello everyone and welcome to the Melia Movement podcast. This is a podcast that brings reality, it brings real stories and it brings real people into the limelight of you watching this. I want to spread awareness that us normal people do go on these journeys and come out the other end succeeding in life. Every single guest that I have on this show has been through something in life and now is doing absolutely truly incredible things. I want to share their journey and exactly how they get there. Louise, welcome.
Thank you. Hello.
Thank you for coming down, making the trip to see me and coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. To be honest, I'm honoured to do it with you, so thank you.
As I said before, we come in. This is probably the most excited I've been for a podcast. So my other guests that have come on, I've known them briefly for a fair bit of time before. Me and you have only recently just become friends, close friends. So it's exciting for me now because I'm literally open book. I've known a few bits and it's blown my mind. So I get to sit here now and just learn about you. I met you on the coaching masters because now you're a coach, a life coach. From the moment you introduced yourself on the workshop, I was like, I need to be mates with her. And from my first perspective is you are the most caring. You've done a lot for me already, and I know you're going to continue to be a very, very close friend throughout my future, and we'll be there for each other on the coaching journey. So thank you again. I'm overwhelmed that you've come into my life. Very grateful. So with all my guests, I get them to start from Little Lou, and why you're Big Lou today. So
okay, well, what an introduction. Thank you. Blown away now. So obviously we met on Coaching Masters, and I've just now started my journey as a coach. And what it's done is it's allowed me to look back over my life, which I have been doing over the last couple of years. So going back to my childhood, I was involved in criminality from the age of 9. So I was on an estate. I lived on a private estate, but we neighboured 2 council estates. And there was a lot of older kids. My brother was involved in a lot of crime. But there were older kids around and I got paid to look after a scanner. So back in the day, it was a scanner and a CB radio. So there was some people that used to nick cars and ring them for a living. And I got asked if I would listen to it and then get the CB radio and say, right, whatever. And there was a code that I used to say. And I got paid £5 for doing that. So you can imagine, 9 years old, I was buzzing. I was like, this is great. Looking back now, it's obviously exploitation, but I didn't know it at the time. Do you know what I mean? So that was my first taste of I suppose, the criminal life. Before that, I've always struggled. Like I don't feel like I've ever found myself. I've never belonged anywhere. Yeah. And I've always felt the sense of belonging would be like a place or having to fit in an environment. I've realised now through my journey it's myself. But at that time there, I just didn't feel like I belonged. So having those people kind of approach me and get me to do that gave me a sense of like, yeah, I feel like I'm something. So obviously that gave me a little bit of a reputation, and I moved forward then. So by the time I was 10, I was smoking weed in shop doorways. 11 years, when I was 11, I was drinking quite a lot of alcohol. And by the time I was 12, I'd been suspended 6 times. I'd been arrested twice, and I've done my first court appearance. I'm charged with ABH. So,
can you see now why I'm so excited?
Yeah. So it was looking back at just that, like from 9 to 12, was just looking at. I've got children now, so going through that then is like, oh my God, and it feels surreal in a way. But then through school, I really didn't like school. It's not that I didn't like school. I didn't like to be challenged by authority. So I continued smoking weed. By the time I was 12, I'd already moved schools. I'd been expelled. So I'd been suspended, went to court. After court, I got expelled. And then I started to take speed. So I took speed at 12 and at 13. And I was smoking a lot of weed, and I continued just to be on this self-destruct. I don't even know why. I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. I argued with my family. I didn't fit in with my family. So I lived with my mum and dad and two siblings. My dad was a heavy drinker, and there was also a lot of domestic violence in the house. They stayed together. My mum was a staunch Catholic, and it wasn't a nice place to be. So I would always try and escape. So I would escape to shop doorways. I'd sit in the shop doorways overnight. I'd smoke weed. I'd smoke ash back in the day. I'd be covered in pot burns. I don't even know why no one really noticed. And then, I started taking speed and ecstasy. And that was the start of the rave scene.
At what age was this?
That was at 13.
Oh, good hell.
So then the rave scene started.
Yeah.
And I remember going out there was a movement called Exodus, which was a big movement back then. And I started going to Exodus. And then from Exodus, it moved on to normal raves. And I was taking, by the time I was 15, I could drop 5 pills in a night. It was like the state of euphoria. I loved it. It was just, I'd take 1 pill or half, and then it kind of just escalated in a really short space of time. And then I would take speed. So I would rave on a Friday night and a Saturday night. And then I'd smoke and have to go to school on a Monday, but I didn't really go to school. Do you know what I mean? I was like, I think in total I was suspended 15 times, expelled 3. And the last time I was expelled, I never forget it. And I look back at it now and I'm like, oh my God, how did you do that? But I was off my nut. I was high as a kite. And I walked into the classroom with a piece of wood and just literally started smashing the classroom up. I got barricaded in. And the teachers barricaded me in there and were like, she's like, call the old Bill, whatever. And I just lost it.
Yeah.
And I don't even know why. Do you know what I mean? Like back then, I look back and I think, what was it? But it would be the slightest thing would trigger me and I'd just think, fuck it. And I'm just...
A lot of anger.
So much anger.
Would you say that, obviously, getting involved with them types of people at a young age isn't normal? Would you say you was groomed and exploited, taken advantage of?
So if I looked at it now, and if that was to happen to one of my children, I'd 100% say that was exploitation, that was grooming at its finest. Yeah. But I suppose back then, times were slightly different. Now, we weren't exposed to like the internet and stuff like we have now. I mean, I remember getting dial-up, do you know what I mean, and having that. So we didn't get that, and we didn't have the news and stuff like that. So it's funny because if I wanted information, I have to go to the library. Yeah. If I wanted to know about the charts, I'd listen to it on a Sunday and I'd get there with my tape and record it, do you know what I mean? And if I wanted to anything in the news, I'd get smash it. So then we weren't exposed to stuff. So we didn't know it was slightly different.
Yeah.
And it was just, we would just use the resources that we had around us, I suppose, and those people just thought, they wanted to do something. But yes, it is exploitation, it is grooming, but it didn't seem like that at the time, which I suppose it probably doesn't to people that are going through it now. So, it probably was. Yeah.
So how's that feel now, looking back on that? Because if it wasn't there, it could have been a completely different path.
It could have been. It could have been, yeah. And I think before that, though, I did have that feeling of I didn't belong, and I think that's why my journey through life. I've tried so many different things because I've wanted to belong. I've wanted to fit in. I've just felt different. And yeah, I mean, when I was 16, I then carried on and I got into heroin and crack, and I took heroin and crack for a while, and I moved out when I was 15. I lived in a high-rise flat and was taking crack and heroin because I felt that I progressed from speed to ecstasy. And I know that, we can say that drugs progress you. I think that they do to a extent. I think some of it's state of mind. But my state of mind was, I don't know who I am, I want to escape.
Yeah.
So let me just get high, let me chase the next high. And I remember taking speed and heroin and crack at sort of 15, 16, 17. And that, I mean, the reason that stopped was because I ended up moving to start selling it.
Should have been chasing boys at that age.
Should have been, yeah. But yeah, no, it was. The thing was, I had boyfriends, and but they were involved in that as well, So I think when I look back, the people that I picked, you were absolutely right. If that, I suppose, if that wasn't there in the first place, I might not have taken that path. But what comes of that is then people are on that path, or you're aligned to them. So the boyfriends that I had were taking those substances.
Would you say it was true love, or would you say it was sort of just lost souls connected and then obviously to fund addictions, habits?
Yeah, it was lost souls, definitely, that were just connected. But at the time it felt love, so I have to sort of honour that and say, well, it did feel like love to me at that time, and that was what I knew as love at that time. So I'll always look back at that and say it was a nice time. But yeah, so then I obviously took heroin and crack, and then I moved forward from that into dealing it, which I don't regret many things because I believe it shaped me into the person I am today, but I know the devastation that causes, and that brings me a lot of it. It's taken me a long time to kind of cope with that because I've seen what it does to people. I've lost people from it. I've lost people that have killed themselves as a result of it. And there was one incident that stands out in my mind. We went to Luton Football Ground and we went to do a deal, and I was with my partner at the time, and we were moving a lot. You know, we're talking the 90s here, so there's a lot of that time. It was rife. There was a lot of people taking it, and we turned up to this one deal. We got a phone call to turn up, and it was horrific. As soon as the guy walked over, we were in the car. We were in a hire car at the time, a little Nissan Micra, and we wound down the window. I had my window down for some reason, which I would never normally do, but I had it down.
I had that rule.
Yeah.
Whenever I would be, when I used to be sat in the car, never, ever, ever my window down. Or if anything, the passenger, a little bit of a crack.
Yeah.
I'll never, ever,
never have my window down. And he wound down his window and mine was slightly down. And he got something thrown in his eyes, and then a screwdriver went straight through the top of his head. And blood just spouted everywhere. And I was just like, fuck, do you know, what do I do? And I was like, by that time, someone's got my ponytail and they're pulling my heads out of the car. He's just getting chopped. He's getting sliced like this. There's blood spouting absolutely everywhere. And they're like trying to get the gear. And at this point, I'm just trying to throw whatever packets I had because I just wanted to get out. Do you know what I mean? My head's come out. They've battered me with a scaffold bar across the top of my head. My head's split. I could feel my head like bulging. And his face is completely like, he couldn't see. So I'm like, drive. So I couldn't drive, but he had to put his feet down and drive. And I'm trying to do the steering.
Yeah.
He had his ear chopped off at that point. Yeah, he had his ear chopped off. He had stab wounds all across his face. He had the screwdriver through his head. And I think what they got in the end was a couple of bags. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't much. In my head, I had part of my skull was caved in. I had chunks of my hair missing. I was black and blue. My head was twice the size.
Fucking hell.
And I remember at that point, we had to go. Obviously, the people that we were dealing for in the food chain, because I didn't know where to go, and it was really close to where it happened. I ended up taking them as near as we could, and literally, I sort of said, "Look, this is what's happened." They got out of that car and just dumped us at the hospital, and and obviously the police and everybody were there. Fortunately, we didn't have anything on us. And we were never investigated, so it wasn't. We just said that we got attacked, and it was kind of left at that. It was all right. There was criminal compensation. He got paid out. I remember that. But after that, I never really saw him again because it was just like, mate, this life isn't for me. Like I don't want this life. Do you know what I mean? I need to rein this shit in because otherwise I'm banging trouble. Do you know what I mean? So I was like, no, this isn't for me. But I still wasn't. So I moved, kind of relented for a little, or regressed for a little bit, went home, stayed with my parents, thought, right, I need to figure out what I'm doing. Applied myself to hairdressing, got a job, did hairdressing, met somebody, and then was in a relationship with them, and then the violence started with that. So within within a year, I was with somebody else, and I was in a fully fledged domestic violent relationship.
Fuck.
Yeah, so, it was that. I mean, I was 17 at that point.
That's only at 17?
At 17. At 17, that was when that happened, the stabbing and the screwdriver through the head, and his ear chopped off. And I remember having to be at the hospital, and they were sewing his ear back on. And it was just like, what am I doing?
That is just trauma after trauma
after
trauma at 17.
17. So that was 8 years of trauma, I suppose, 8 years of being involved in that life. So that's why I think I went back and thought, I can't do this. This isn't for me.
Yeah.
And I met somebody and I had a relationship with him, and it was really violent. And that was the first time I'd had the violence inflicted on me.
Yeah.
So before I'd been around it, a scuffle or whatever, and obviously that part there was, but that wasn't in a relationship with somebody I trusted. So I was really fragile, I think, looking back, like emotionally fragile, which I would be, obviously suffering that trauma at such a young age and not having any real stability. My mum and dad were together, but it just wasn't a nice place to be. So I didn't feel like I could go and speak to them. So then I was in that relationship, and it was nice at first. It was great, do you know, as it always is, really. It was nice, and I was like, yeah, I feel this is it. This is the one.
Were you still taking drugs at the time?
No, because at that, before I started dealing the heroin, I came off of heroin and crack. I didn't take it.
Yeah.
And
that's hard to do, though. How
yeah,
did you...
so I went cold turkey. And that's one of the things. I've got one of these... not personalities, but there's a trait in me that when my shutters go down, when I make a decision, like I will hang it out as long as I can.
Yeah.
But then it's like shut, and the shutters come down. Open. That's it, and it's like, right, okay, my mindset now. I've got to shift. So I ended up I went through cold turkey, and clucking is a horrible thing. Like, let's get it out there. It's like, I get it right. It's a flipping horrible thing.
Did you lock yourself in the room?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I lived in a flat at that time, a high rise, and I locked myself in a room. Yeah. The
demons. So obviously you're going cold turkey, and then obviously you've had the how was that experience? Because that is mental.
It was, at first it's weird, because when it happened, you're like, you go through that part and it's like, oh God, this is scary, this is like not, I don't want to do that again. But you've got an adrenaline, you've got everything pumping around you, and then it's like, shit, well, what do I do? Because it's like, right, okay, it's back to basics. I've got to go on the down low. I can't be dealing that.
Yeah.
I don't want to be out there. I don't want to really... I had an issue with trusting people then, because it was like, well, I couldn't fully see who'd done the attack. I was went into a little state of paranoia. I was still smoking weed, and that doesn't obviously help. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'd be sitting there smoking weed and then get paranoid and think, oh, that was him, when it wasn't. I'd just be seeing things. So with that, I thought, right, I need to look. And then I kind of retreated back to long-term friends that I'd had, that had been through my childhood, and just sort of drifted for a little while. Thought I needed a job, worked in hairdressing. Then obviously met that guy, was in a relationship, and then that's when the violence started with him. And I remember the first time he punched me in my face. Oh, my God, I remember seeing stars. It smacked my jaw straight. He punched me one time right over a fence, and literally lifted me off my feet, and it knocked my jaw. And I've had problems with my jaw ever since. It's been broken a few times since. But and I was just like, oh my God. And then I started to internalise that, like, I'm not worth anything. I'm not good for anything. Like, why is this always happening to me?
Because you must have just seen violence and people using or letting you down as just normal.
Yeah.
Because that's all you would have seen.
Yeah, yeah.
And then any time someone would have done something good for you to be in your life, you'd be like, well, this is too good to be true. This isn't normal. Yeah. So your self-worth must have been absolutely battered.
Yeah, it was. And trust has always been an issue for me. And I think even up until... like last year, or 2021, trust has been a massive issue for me. Yeah. And having imposter syndrome and self-doubt, I've had that throughout my life. I've carried that throughout my life when I haven't needed to. But at that point, I just felt really, I had nothing in me. But then what I did have was a mouth on me, because obviously when you're feeling like crap, I'm not saying I was crazy. People used to call me wild, and like, she's off the head, she's wild. And I was, because I wouldn't give a shit. And like, obviously with the kicking off in the classroom, that was just one thing. That was like my go-to. Yeah. I'd get a missed, and I wouldn't think twice about throwing a table or chair if I was that person.
Do you think that was ego-driven? Because from a young age with me, I was lost as fuck. Yeah. I ended up becoming someone I wasn't, because I wanted to be someone that fitted in. And with that, I was like this 4 foot kiddie, not like skin and bones, but I was like putting on this massive front. And in the end, like looking back on it, since obviously the reflection, and I thought, you just ended up being a little prick, trying to fit in with people that probably would have just loved little old Brad that was a nice fun. But then as soon as you get that one bit of name for yourself, you can't drop that. Because as soon as you're seen, I should kick off, when you take a step back, that's a little bit of weakness, and then it shows a little bit of vulnerability.
100%.
So then it goes up 10 notches to prove it right.
Yeah, that's 100%. That was me all over.
Yeah.
And I'd had to take it one step further each time.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't... And that is a trait that I have. It's a negative trait that I have, but it's also a positive trait I have, because when I do something, I always want to better it.
Yeah.
And that, in the negative side, I had a reputation from, obviously, doing stuff from 9 years old, 10 years old. It was only growing on that. And when I was like, I mean, when I left school by the time I was 16, I'd already been arrested 5 times. I've got a massive rap sheet from being arrested for shoplifting, for whatever. So I always had a reputation. So throughout, as I moved forward, and at that age, I just wanted to build on it. I couldn't show that sign of weakness, because it was, for me, backing down was a weakness, or even showing vulnerability was the biggest weakness for me. So I wouldn't. I just put my front up and just go and smash something up, or kick off. Yeah. And it was coping mechanism. But at the same time, it was, inside was just this like young little girl, really, that didn't know what she was doing and was just lost.
So with the relationship with your parents, do you think that had an impact on how you went sort of AWOL as a child? Did you have a loving upbringing?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I can't fault my mum whatsoever. You know, my dad is... Well, the thing is, I look at my life, I look at my parents, because this has come up a lot for me. And I don't want to sit there and cast blame, because, you know, I'm in control of my actions. Yeah. Even at a young age, I kind of was in control of my actions. But then when I look at my mum and dad, so my dad lost his mum when he was 9 years old. He chased after an ambulance, didn't know she was gone. The only reason he found out was because his dad had tried to commit suicide and was found in a field, and that's when it came out at 9 years old. Okay. He ended up going off to boarding school and ended up he went to boarding school, then a children's home, went to sea. So he's never had a stable upbringing either. Yeah. And my mum, she lost her mum at a very young age. So I think that there was probably a lot of, they might not have known how to parent.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Mum was an older mum. She was going through menopause as soon as she had me.
Yeah.
My dad was violent. He was a heavy drinker. So they probably had their own battles and struggles. Do you know what I mean? So I could sit here and say, yeah, it was them. I didn't have love and support. But actually, looking at it now from my point now, I would say they were probably battling their own struggles, man. And they were trying the best that they could. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So where did it go from? Obviously.
So from there, so what happened from then? I obviously was in a domestic violent relationship, and I was chased with a hammer. I was hit on the back with a hammer. I had my house smashed up. I had broken jaw. I had a cracked skull. I've had different parts of my body broken, bruised, ribs broken.
By the same bloke?
Yeah. And then I went on and had a little girl. So
with him?
Yeah.
Let me just pull this back in. From the first time he hit you, how come... Obviously, I know we could say you see it as the normal, but how did you stay in a relationship like that for so long? Was it a bit of a narcissist? Was it good times and then you're holding on to the good times and a bit of hope that he might change? He's got his own demons, or just to have someone there in your life?
I think, in all honesty, I think it was because that's all I knew.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I've been exposed to domestic violence from a very, very young age. That's all I remember.
So
is
to
that
you, that's
it's
how
normality.
That's how a relationship will be.
Yeah, that's exactly how it was. And then throughout the trauma and the violence that I'd seen as a result of that, it's just normal.
Yeah.
So, and you know, when obviously you make up, it's like, oh yeah, they've made up now. So you just think that's normal,
yeah.
and it really wasn't. And then I found out, we split, and I found out that I was pregnant, and I didn't find out till 6 months. And I was just like, wow, okay, like I'm going to go ahead and have the baby and everything. And I did, and it was an absolute blessing. I remember looking at her thinking, once I had her, God, do you know what I mean? It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And, you know, regardless of whether I'm on my own now, I want to, I'm going to love her and I'm going to raise her the best as I can. Which I did, but I was still having real internal struggles with myself. I was still really angry and still really bitter. And I loved her, but I couldn't... It was strange because I was feeling these feelings, which was love. But I didn't know what love was because all of my other experiences with it weren't like what I was feeling. So I was just like, what the hell is going on? And as a new mum at 19, you're like, what the hell?
Fuck, this is only at 19.
Yeah, this is 19.
Fucking hell.
Yeah.
I was expecting you to go, oh yeah, I'll be at 28. So that's
no.
That's only 2 years from doing crack and heroin.
Yeah. So now I'm a mum. Yeah.
Right.
And yeah, it was like, whoa, this is kind of like, I don't know what to feel. I don't know how to feel. So then I started internalising that and then feeling guilty that I couldn't love her and I didn't love her. So that started another spiral, and I was angry and bitter, and I ended up drinking. So I'd sort of stopped. I'd stopped smoking weed and stuff like that, and taking any drugs. But I then moved on to alcohol, and with alcohol, it has been a problem for me in the past, because what it does is it'll get me into a jolly mood, but there's something in me, and the minute that goes, I switch, and I have a mist, and we could be fine 1 minute, and then I will throw glasses, I will do whatever. This monster comes out, and I was still full of rage, and I remember I was obviously still mouthy, still violent, still angry, and then there was an incident in a pub. And there was a woman, she'd made a threat to my daughter and said, oh, well, I was obviously, there was a big argument. And she lived very close to where my daughter was being babysat at the time. So I'd moved on, I was 20 now. And I'd gone back I started working in a sandwich factory. I thought, right, I've got to really try this really hard. Hairdressing wasn't for me because I just couldn't cope with that many people. So I thought, right, I'm going to go and work. And I worked in a sandwich factory. So I was just making sandwiches. It was easy for me because I just put on my hat, put on my overalls, and just stood there, just slap, do you know what I mean? Like making sandwiches, didn't need to interact with anyone. And if they did, or if I was angry, I'd just, to be honest, like, see what goes on in sandwich factories. Yeah, that's kind of, you know what I mean? So it worked. And then there was a woman, and we'd had an argument, and she sort of said to me, she made a threat, and she said, well, I know where your daughter lives. And with that, I just picked up actually what originally happened was I was in the pub on Halloween, and there was a scuffle, and she smacked me in the face, and it was a mistaken identity. She'd completely got somebody else. And then when I went back and saw her, I said, look, put your hand up. I thought, right, this has taken a lot for me, do you know what I mean? Because I really want to tear the head off you, do you know what I mean? Like, let's have it. So I went back the week later, and I put my hand out to shake my hand and say, look, do you know what, it's done, it's mistaken identity, I get it. And she was like, no, I know who you are. And I thought, right, game on. Got separated, and then a week later, I saw her again, and that's when she made a comment. And I remember having a pint of Stella at the time, and I picked the pint up and I just threw it at her. I was like, let's go. Let's have it. And I was like proper geared up. And anyway, we ended up having a scuffle, we got separated, and then I followed her back to where she was, and then nutted her, and we had a big row, and police were called. And it kind of escalated. It went to court because I've obviously been in trouble before, because I was Larry. She had quite a significant amount of damage done to her. Broke her nose, and she had black eyes and jaw and stuff like that. I got charged with, it was ABH I got charged with. And then they remanded me straight away, but I got out on bail. So I went to Holloway.
What was that like?
It was an experience. I'll never forget it. Like the first night they put me out. What it was, I got arrested on the Friday. They said to me, I'll come down, because there was a warrant out, and I was like, oh, no, I'd swerve that. I don't need to be doing it. They were like, you need to come down. I thought, right. Go on Friday. Don't even know why. Yeah. I thought, yeah, go on Friday, it'd be all right. I'll be out, and I can at least have the weekend to myself. But what I didn't know was, so I went down on Friday, they put me in front of court for Saturday morning. And what I didn't realise is people don't get out of court Saturday morning. That's a straight remand. No one told me that. And I remember sitting in the cell, and I was just like, mate, what the hell has happened? Yeah. And so I was sitting in the cell, and funny enough, I knew two girls. So in the court, there's a big giant cell, holding cell, and I remember I was banging all night in the police cells, and I was shouting at them. I was arguing with these two girls. Like, shut the fuck up, whatever. Anyway, I thought, right, this might kick off now when we go into the holding cells. So I'm starting preparing myself, thinking, right, okay, right, I don't know who these girls are. Anyway, I've psyched myself up, as you do you know what I mean? Jumping up and down, like giving you, let's have it. And I walked into the holding cell, and it was two girls that I knew, and I was like, I couldn't believe it was them. So we had a bit of banter and stuff. Yeah. And obviously I went up, came back down, and we all got remanded, so we all went together. So it took the edge off the unknown, because even if you're even if you've been to prison, I suppose, a few times, it's still that unknown, what you're going into, who's in there. So it's it's a familiar surrounding, but getting in that sweatbox, travelling, and
you don't know where you're going.
You don't know what you're going, where you're going, what you're doing. And at that point, I didn't know I was going to Holloway because they don't really tell you. They just, whatever's on the list, you go to.
Yeah.
So I remember my first night, I went in there and I was put into a separate holding cell, so on the reception wing. And I walked in and it was the smallest smallest room I've ever been in, like coldest room I've ever been in. And it was just like a little small room with a little bed that had a green blanket on. The blanket had so many holes in it. I don't even know, like obviously that's how they do their lines and stuff. So I don't know what had happened with that or how many, like there was never keeping me warm. And the window wouldn't shut. So all I remember was there was sanitary towels on the window. That obviously not used much, do you know what I mean? But there was... That'd have been proper grim. But yeah, there were sanitary towels around because the window wouldn't shut. So that was to stop the banging, because I think that had drove him mad. So I could see why they'd done it, do you know what I mean? And that was the saving. And then I remember sitting in that cell thinking, mate, you proper done it here, haven't you? Like, what the hell? Like, this ain't good, do you know what I mean? You've come up against it now, Lou. And I was sitting there thinking, right, okay, in the morning I'm going out. Like, so you have to kind of psych yourself up, because I came in the evening, so by the time I got there, didn't see anyone. So I was like, right, okay, I don't know what it's going to be like when I get out there. Not sure how this is going to be. And I came out. I thought, right, psych myself up again. I was thinking, because you've got to constantly think like it's going to kick off, or you know, and because I've always lived like that, I've always been lived like, and since that experience especially, I've been ready to go. So wherever I've gone somewhere, I'm literally like, right, I need to have it. So I remember walking out, and at that point it was, what I didn't realise is it was 23-hour bang up, so at the weekend. So basically you went out, you got your stuff and you came back in. So that was all right. And then they moved me the next day to a 4-pad. And I was with a couple of girls from Birmingham that got done with importation. And it was what it was. Like I think that's where I'd say that I'm quite adaptable, is that I'm in a situation, this is it, let's make the most of it, let's make the best of it. Like, it is what it is. There's no point in me climbing the walls or making it, you know, just get on and deal with it, stand and deal. So we ended up, I was in a room, there was one woman, I'll never forget her, bless her, she'd robbed the PTA. She looked like a proper mum, do you know what I mean? She'd robbed the PTA, she just needed a cash advance, and they put her in remand. And I saw her laying on the bed and she just cried the whole weekend. And my heart broke for her. She wouldn't engage, she wouldn't talk, she wouldn't do anything, because she was just literally like breaking down. And there was no support for her. Like, we raised the alarm a couple of times and said, look, I'm worried about her, do you know what I mean? But she was just absolutely heartbroken. And the other 2 girls that were banged up for importation, we had a laugh, man. Do you know what I mean? We were sat opposite the Holloway Road and there was this, like, I remember seeing the Heineken lorry pull up. And we would just, like, obviously to serve the pubs and stuff. And we used to make songs up and stuff. So I spent a couple of weeks with them, and that was good. And then I managed to get out on bail. So I got out on bail, and me being me was like, nah, I'm not happy about this. I mean, I've just spent time away.
Yeah.
So there was a witness to the assault that I did. So I threatened a witness.
Fucking hell, Lou.
So I was just like, right, thinking that I could bully my way to make it right.
But you don't know any different.
I didn't know any different.
Because obviously the men you would have been around, obviously, are like, if they want something, they're going to go and get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, so them lads that were fucking slashing you and your fellow up, they wanted something, they've done everything they can to get it. So you're programmed. Yeah. If you want a positive outcome, you're going to bully your way in. And that's it. Yeah. There's no other way around it. That's
a really interesting point, because I had never looked at it like that, but you're absolutely right. And that's probably why I've gone on and done stuff in my life. I threatened them. I got charged with witness intimidation. So that was another charge. So basically, went to court. This time, they charged me with that, and they kept me out this time, and it obviously went to court. And that's when I got sentenced. I got 9 months for the ABH, and I got 6 months for the witness intimidation. Did you go back to Holloway? No, I went to High Point, which is, so it was category A, obviously Holloway was, and High Point was category C. Okay. So I went to, again, it was like, right, because you don't know. They're just, right, you got the bus. You got the bus, whatever. I'm like, where's it going? Is it going to Holloway or whatever? And they were like...
You're going back to your two mates?
Yeah.
And the Heineken.
That's what I was thinking, yeah. I was like, yeah, well, actually, I had a bit of a... You know, I enjoyed that then. Going to go and fill them in on what I've been doing. So, yeah, and they moved me to High Point, but they didn't tell me until the last minute. And I was just like... Okay, well, that wasn't where I was planning to go, kind of thing, and that was a long journey because at that point I was on my own in the sweat box, and I'm thinking, right, okay, now when I've been remanded, you don't know what's going to happen, so you're just there, but when you know you've got a sentence in front of you, it's like, right, okay, this is what I've got to do for the rest of my days here. And what I did do before I went to court, because obviously I was a bit prepared then, a bit more savvy about what potentially could happen. I packed some stuff in my bags. I packed cigarettes. I packed like stamps and stuff like that because I thought I can trade as soon as I get in there.
Yeah.
But they took it off me. But apart from the cigarettes. But yeah. So I'll never forget the court. Actually, like my mum come to see me. Mum was there, and I thought I'm getting away with it. I thought I was getting away with it. To be fair, like I was just going to get a hefty fine. And then when the Group 4 come in, and I was just like that.
15 months.
Yeah, I was like, okay then, all right then. It's not going as I planned. And my mum got up and she shouted abuse at the judge, to be fair. Yeah. Because obviously she was angry and stuff. But yeah, when I went into the Category C, it was like, right, you have to, they were houses. It was really weird because you go up to different houses. There was a religious house, there was a detox unit, there was the induction house. It was 4 houses in total. And I remember walking through, and it wasn't very pleasant because you had literally, it was early. I think I got there at like 4 o'clock maybe, and because I got the lunchtime bus. That's what it was. That's why I ended up going to High Point, because I got an earlier bus. And there was these girls, like they're all lined up, and I'm walking through the middle of them with my bag, see-through bag, and I'm thinking, fuck. So I thought to myself, right, I've got to just hold my own here.
Yeah.
And so I kind of thought, right, I can't be cocky, but I've got to hold my own. And there was some beasts, like, I ain't going to lie, there was some proper beasts in that lineup. And I'm thinking, shit, man, there's like probably a set of teeth between them, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there was real proper nasty people in there. I'm thinking, right, okay, so I've got my bag. By this time, I'm 21, do you know what I mean? And I'm like, right, I'm going to look them all in the eye. So I've kind of looked them all in the eye. I've gone, all right, giving it all that. And then next week, they've come to my cell and they've gone, what you got? I've gone, what do you mean, what have I got? So I thought, right, I'm going to have to just stand my ground. What'd you get done for? And I was like, well, what are you, old Bill? Let me get settled in my pad first, do you know what I mean? Like, back off, love. And that was then, it was like, right, okay, she's obviously all right. So I'd kept my fags. They wouldn't let me have everything else because that had to go through all checks and stuff. So I think by the end of the night, I'd traded it. I'd traded some fags. I've got stamps, got envelopes, got a Bounty. I loved a Bounty chocolate bar. Got a bag of crisps and stuff. Do you know what I mean? I got myself set up in my pad. And then I was all right. So I wrote the sentence out. Obviously, I missed my daughter terribly because she'd been born at this point.
And where was your daughter being?
She was with my mum.
So with going into prison for the second time, scary?
No.
No? Any dramas in there? Any problems?
No dramas, no problems. And I met some, I met some great people. For me, it was a real eye-opener.
Yeah.
And as much as I would say, like, it wasn't, I know it wasn't probably the best, our best place to be, but I learned so much from it. Yeah. I learned, like, seeing that people from different backgrounds, people struggle across it. Like, there's no one's life that on paper looks okay, but actually there was people in there, there was teachers in there was people in there, like I said, in the other one, from the PTA, there was, people that are older, middle-aged women. Then there was young women, people that have acted in self-defence. I mean, one thing that I did notice was women's prisons are a lot of emotion. They're led on emotions. So when you're like 90% of their crime is based on a man or based on emotions. So it was a real eye-opener. And, I didn't have any problems or any drama with anybody. And I think that's because I held myself in a way that I wasn't confrontational. That was the only time I was probably really chilled and actually not confrontational, but ready to go if I needed to go. And I could switch like that if I was ready to go. So, I kind of ate loads of carbs, as you do, the slop.
The Bounty Queen.
Bounty Queen, and I'd have found a love for muesli as well. I used to trade people's muesli. I was like, I loved it. Yeah, I could make hot chocolate with like a chocolate mousse. And that was the thing, because it was a sea wing. We had like, they used to, the cell doors were open, so we could integrate in each other's cells and stuff, and they just locked the end door, and then it was lights out. You had to go back to your cell at like 10 o'clock or whatever. But we'd sit in the there was a few of us that used to sit in this one pad, and we'd sit there, we'd make lemon tea. Like we'd talk, like obviously we'd have a tea bags, we'd get a lemon, and we'd all get a little bit and save it from our dinner, and then we'd have it in the evening. And I remember we'd have the radio on, and there was 21 seconds to go. And we used to do that over 21 days to go, 21 days to go. And yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, there was some sights. I did see a few people hurt themselves. There was a lot of self-harming. There was one girl that I'll never forget it. She cut herself in front of me, and the blood just literally spat all over the ceiling.
Cut her wrists?
Yeah. Yeah, she done it all the time. She had scars up her arm like I've never seen before in my life, and I'd never want to see again. She was high on Valium. She was high on loads of different drugs. And people, what they used to do is they put it under their tongue, and then they'd obviously check the mouth. Wherever they stored it, I don't know where they stored it, but they'd take it out and they'd give it to her. She was off her face the whole time. Yeah. But she hadn't hardly any teeth in her mouth. She'd lost toes. She used to inject like her veins had gone. She used to inject herself in her stomach. Then she went in between her toes just so it could get into her blood system sooner. So she was, really, really far gone. Yeah. And there wasn't any support for her. Yeah,
unfortunately, there's no saving in that.
No, there isn't. And that's the thing. She was definitely down a really, really dark path. And I think I don't even know if she's around, but to get back out of that, she'd have had to have done a lot of work.
I do say, like, when you hear bad things, I do, and we was talking in the car, it's how we can look at situations. I do hear things, and I do sometimes think, yeah, that is absolutely fucking terrible. However, how can I use this to benefit my life? Yeah. And I know that sounds brutal. Yeah. Because obviously I would never wish anything on anyone. However, the situation's happened. Yeah. It is bad and it is heartbreaking. However, I've heard things and it definitely does go, well, do you really want to go down that path? Yeah. So I do, it's very hard to explain this, but I think hopefully it's coming out right. But so say that example, for you, you're like, right, I need to learn from this woman. Yeah. That's the best way. I need to learn that me doing crack and heroin and being in prison and away, that like, no. Yeah. So that is the positive that you need to take from a terrible situation.
100%. And actually that was the turning point for me, because that was when I realised that I was different. So I didn't even fit in there. I was like, mate, I don't even fit in prison. Like, where the hell do I fit in? Do you know what I mean?
A woman that was trying to fit in everywhere. Yeah. If you're not fitting in a place that you trying to be someone has had you ending up, then there's all the signs that maybe I should be doing something different. That's exactly
right. And I was like, do you know what, this isn't for me. So I came out, when I was released, and I thought, right, I need to reinvent myself. When I was in there, I thought, I don't want to be here. I don't want to come in and out here. I don't want to be that cycle. I'm not like these people. I can get on with them, and I'm almost like I'm here to observe, to learn. And then when I came out, I thought, right, I need to reinvent myself. I need to get a job. I need to do some stuff. So I ended up going back to college. So I ended up studying fashion. So I did fashion design, millinery, and I ended up going on to work in a fashion house, like a well-known fashion house. And I did that for quite a few years. Went on, had a son. And I was like, right, this, for me, I mean, I had shaved with spiky hair back then, do you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Like, I'm picturing this, like, little Pretty Lou with the hair and that, and you just had
proper shaved head, man.
No way.
Yeah.
Really?
Shaved, short and spiky hair. I was a proper tomboy, man. I used to, I'd be a Ralph Lauren shirt, pair of jeans, and a pair of Rockport boots. Do you know what I mean? That's what I was dressed in like.
Was you doing drugs in prison?
No.
Nothing.
Because at that point, I didn't want to take drugs. Okay. And actually, when I'm in an environment like that, you need to have your wits about you. Yeah. That weren't for me.
The shutter's down, done.
Shutter's down, mate, and it's like on high alert. Yeah.
So how was the fashion job?
So I did the fashion job for years, and I liked it, and it was...
Did it sort out your fashion sense?
Yeah, man. Definitely. Thank you. Then I went through a crazy stage of experimenting. So I did. I kind of went from being this tomboy that only wore like jeans and trainers and whatever to this, like, she says stand here in jeans and trainers, to then into like skirts and all different stuff. And I really went mad. I kind of grew my hair, used to wear loads of costume jewellery, and really fully embraced that and that fashion world. And I loved it. And I kind of adopted this different person. And I remember, like, I told somebody at that point, and they were like, no way, that's not you. And I thought, yeah, okay, well, I've got this. This is all right. So I did that for a while. I had my son, and everything was good, although I still had anger and pain.
Yeah.
And it came out in my alcohol. So I wouldn't drink, like, during the week or anything like that. I was a Monday to Friday working. But then when I had a drink...
Fuck it, bum.
Yeah, exactly that. And I'd sit there and I'd be angry, but I couldn't even tell you what I was angry about.
We often can't.
No. So what I'd do is I'd pick something. And if there wasn't anything to be angry about, I would find it.
Something.
Yeah, I'd self-sabotage. And that's what I've done all my life. I would find something and think, right, okay, well, this is going too well. Something's going to happen now. This is going too well. Well, I'm going to preempt it before it comes and gets me. So it's like, right, let's be proactive about this.
That's the thing. It's just like, I mean, I was the king of fucking up my happiness. The amount of time there's been parts in my life. And the best thing, if you ruin something, it's easier to not have it than live with having it and have the thoughts of losing it.
Absolutely.
So that's why in relationships, in jobs, the anger comes out, because then you walk away and you're like, I've done that before it was going to get me.
Yeah, that's what I was. It was like, yeah, I'll do that before it gets me.
Yeah.
Or so, I worked for years and I did really enjoy it. And I thought, right, okay, I'm going to continue. And I did continue that. And I used to just get drunk and that was it. And I was quite happy and content. And then I split with my son's dad. We'd been together like 7 years, split with him. And he ended up having an addiction, which I kind of won't go into, but we kind of split and it was, it wasn't a good time.
Was he with you through prison?
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. Yeah. I met him just before I went to prison. Yeah. So then we kind of, so I moved forward, continued that lifestyle, and I really liked it. I liked being normal, but I still felt like I wasn't normal. Yeah. But I liked the idea of being just normal. Yeah. I then randomly, I met my husband at that point, really, like, not long after, and that was really bizarre. He'd been widowed. So that was that part of my life, and my life goes in chunks, really. So that was obviously my childhood, and then I went into the fashion and I loved that and whatever. And then I met my husband and he'd been widowed. So he'd lost his wife at 36 to cancer, to cervical cancer, and he had 2 young children. Obviously I had 2 children. So we met, and it was like lost souls. We kind of met in a pub over football, and we instantly hit it off. And we moved in together quite quickly. Yeah. And we moved in together, and we had a great, it was a great relationship. There was like 4 kids all of a sudden in the mix. We then got married after about 18 months. And I mean, I mentioned to you earlier about my wedding day, but I kind of talk about that now as well, because that's moving forward into my adult life. It was like quite a poignant moment. So got married. We were getting married, and I remember the week before the wedding, and it was the Monday, and I thought, right, okay, obviously I'm getting married, it's bride's happy week. I wrote my car off on the Monday. I was like, fucking hell, this is a great week. So I wrote my car off, and then the next day I had my wedding rehearsal. Went to the wedding rehearsal. The priest called me Steve's, my partner's late wife's name. So I was like, okay. That really knocked me, because I was just like, oh, mate, that was really hard to take. The Wednesday, it was the really bad floods in the UK. So all of my table linen, table favours, everything regarding the wedding was, they couldn't fulfil the order. They'd been ruined. So I was like, mate, I'm just getting bad worse. So I hit the bottle. I was like, right, I'm just going to get drunk. And I remember waking up at a friend's house proper messy the next day, thinking, oh, God, what the hell am I doing with myself? Yeah. Thursday, the photographer cancelled. And like, now, how I am now, I'd be like, mate, these are signs. Like, this is someone...
You would think that's the universe, man.
That is the universe. But at the time, I weren't in tune with it. I weren't aligned to what I was doing. So I was just like, this is just a problem.
Because there's not been one... You've been aware, and I think anyone that is in that lifestyle, it's mad, because they are the most loyal, conscious people. Yeah. Because they do nothing. Because of the anxiety, because of the fear of something might happen, they live in the present without even knowing.
Yeah.
So all the overthinking, all the anxiety, you're more in tune with everything. However, it's a shame that they don't know about the signs and the warnings that can come subconsciously. So you've done no self-work, however, you have put yourself in a conscious state.
Yeah. So, at the point, I'd never done any self-work. I'd just, do you know what, I'd put it all down in a box and filed it away. I hadn't filed it correctly, and that's why the demons were rearing their head. So then I had all these signs, and I didn't even, and then we got married. Anyway, the day of the wedding, I ended up being called her name again by the priest.
Fuck.
And I was just like, mate, I was absolutely mortified. I walked up the aisle crying my eyes out because I was just like, how can this happen?
Yeah.
The drive, I was going to go home. I just wanted to go home. I thought this is meant to be my wedding day. I'm going to go home. But the talk in the car, and I ended up obviously going to the reception. I spoke to the person who had my engagement ring because I took it off. I was like, have you got my engagement ring? That was the first time I'd found out that had been lost.
Right.
So I was just like, mate, do you know what?
This not
not meant to be. I mean, it lasted 8 years, and we had a great time, and and during that time, there was a lot of the next stage of my life, which is when I ended up going to university. So I'm kind of settled into that married life. I had Danny, so there was 5 kids in total, and I thought, right, I've done fashion for so long. I want to go now into something else. Yeah. So I thought, well, I want to go into marketing. So I ended up applied through clearing and managed to get into university, which was great. And then my first course was I had to do an access course. So I did law. And I literally got a top mark in law. Obviously, my past background. Bearing in mind, I'd left school with not one qualification. They didn't even know who I was when I turned up. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I said 15 times I've been suspended and expelled 3. I'd left with nothing, told that I'd never amount to anything. And here I am doing like my access course in uni or the extended degree. My first module, I got an A+, and they were like, maybe you should reconsider doing marketing because I think this is a really good strong point for you. And I thought, mate, I don't know, because obviously but I was a new person. No one knew about my criminal past at uni. Anyhow, I thought, right, I'm going to change it, went and did law. So I ended up getting a first-class law degree. I won Student of the Year in my second year. I won a scholarship for my final year. I went to the Law Society, told the Law Society about my past. They were like, it's absolutely fine, you can practice because your convictions are spent. It's like a long time ago, we're happy for you. But I didn't tell anyone because what I wanted to do throughout my time was I didn't want to be judged. Yeah. And I still had this imposter syndrome within me thinking like if they know they're going to look at me different, I might be a case study for the class or they might. So I just like let the teacher, and I'm not a teacher's pet or a teacher's geek or anything, but I used to sit at the front of the class, do you know what I mean? Because I wanted to get this information. Yeah. I've moved on so much in my life. I ended up, the day before I could collect my award, I thought, I'm just going to have to go and say something to him. So I got the dean and I got the head of the faculty in the thing, and I said, look, they were like, oh, amazing, like you're one of the best students we've had, your engagement with the group, you've got a really good understanding, and I went, like, I've got something to tell you, you might want to sit down. And I remember Dr. Joe at the time, Dr. Joe Stevens, absolutely great guy. I said to him, look, I've got a bit of a past. And when I told him, he was just absolutely gobsmacked. And then so was Dr. Shane Sullivan, who was the landlord. They were completely blown away. But I had to do that so I could collect my award with integrity. So actually, do you know what? I didn't tell you. It's not because, not because I wanted to trick you, but I wanted a level playing field. I wanted you to take me on my academic ability and actually on my intelligence. And it was a great time. I got my degree. I went on, moved on and worked for Budweiser. I worked on FIFA World Cup. So I'd gone like from this person that had absolutely big background in criminal and stuff to working on FIFA World Cup 2014. I did the Gulf Open, I did Wimbledon, massive tournament, massive things. I put all of the activations into the supermarkets, met some amazing people, travelled, went to anything that come up. I was at dinners. I did the biggest out of home experience in the UK in Europe to date, which is the IMAX. So when England were playing Sweden, I organised was part of the team that organised the big out of home exhibition. Yeah. So we had football stars turning up. We showed it on the big screen for our big customers. Proper, had completely whirlwind, gone from there.
360. You've gone from Holloway to that.
Holloway to that, yeah.
Fucking hell.
Yeah. And then I moved from there. So I enjoyed that. Obviously, I'd split with my husband. And then I met somebody else who was probably, in terms of my adult life, it would be one thing that I would say was a mistake.
Okay.
And I don't ever say that. And I got into another domestic violent relationship.
Yeah.
And this time it was, he was horrific. He used to drag me out of my bed when I was sleeping. He cracked my skull with a weight, for a weight at my head. He tried to drown me in a bath and drowned me with Baileys. Beat me black and blue. Horrific. It was a really horrific time because, sorry, just going back. So before my husband and I split, my best friend, her son, Rehearsal, he was only 8 years old. He was diagnosed with a medulloblastoma, brain tumour. And because my husband's wife had fought with cancer, he found it very hard to cope with that. So Rehearsal, I watched him, he fought that battle for a year and then sadly passed away. And it was such a hard time in my life because I remember I was second year of my degree. I was trying to do that. I thought, right, I'm going to run a marathon as well. So when I was studying for my degree, I was looking after 5 kids. I thought, right, I'm going to also run a marathon to raise money for little Reese. And it was really hard watching him be that support framework for my friend, be that he was my son's best friend. So to be there for my son. And obviously I didn't have that support from my partner, from my husband, but that's not... I fully understand why he couldn't support me in the way that I wanted to because he was grieving still. Yeah. So that was really hard, and watching that and go through that was just so traumatic. Like I can't even begin to kind of explain watching a little person pass away. Yeah. And then when he passed away for like 23 days, I read to him every day because she didn't want him to be alone. And straight off the back of that, my mum got cancer for the first time. So in that time, I started to become vulnerable again and become weak again and become, I say weak, not that, I was in a place where I just felt, where I'd been so strong and secure and I'd built this new me, this adult me, so to speak. I was really, I was strong and not affected by stuff. But then when it happened with Reese, all of my other stuff and when my partner couldn't be there, I started to feel alone again really badly. Yeah. And then obviously he passed and my mum got really ill and our relationship and everything crumbled. When I got with the new partner, I was really vulnerable. I was in a really weaker state. I felt really isolated, really kind of like it's really hard to explain. And normally I would have recognised, or I thought I would have recognised those signs because I'd been through that before. So when I met with him, and we were friends for 20 years before that. And although I still had this strength to strive and do well within jobs and career and stuff like that, because that was my one thing. It was like, right, I'm going to go forward and do my career. And I was still doing really well. He saw that as didn't like that. That was a weakness in him. So I suffered some horrific batterings at that point, like really horrific. And I'm talking, this is 10 years ago. Mm. So it's not that long ago, really. Or not, it'll be 10 years ago. No, it's 8 years ago. So it was like, it was awful, like being drowned and stuff, and my kids seeing it. And I really lived on the edge then because he was like a schizophrenic, so he used to smoke a lot of weed and high-grade weed. So it was obviously laced with chemicals and all of that sort of stuff. And I'd never know, like I used to laugh because at first it was like a bit of a, God, you've got a split personality. Like, yeah. And what had happened was he'd smoke throughout the day. And then when he went to bed at night, he'd wake up in the morning in this paranoid schizophrenic state. And I used to say, it's because he's so used to, from the minute he gets up, it's like wake and bake, do you know what I mean? He wakes up, smokes. All
they go back into that safe space and that comfort zone then as soon as you get a joint, wake up and you're just back in fucking cuckoo land.
Yeah, and it's almost like when he woke back up, it's because there weren't enough in his system, so he'd like be psycho for a little while till he got back into that state. And Oh, I did. I suffered. It was a horrendous time. I felt isolated from my family. I fell out with my family because of it. My mum obviously was just getting over cancer, and I just completely I had black eye after black eye after black eye.
Did you not walk straight? Because they say, don't they, that the universe sends you people that remind you of your past, or the same people from your past to awaken you, and obviously the test of how much work you have done.
Yeah.
Was there not a warning sign straight away? But again,
no.
Normal.
No. So the reason I didn't get that warning sign was because of my emotional state prior to that.
Yeah.
So watching Reese go through cancer and watching my mum.
It's mad what the vulnerability does to you. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
completely took it all away.
Yeah.
So then, so then from that point, obviously that was horrific, and I thought, I need to just go on a complete, I need to look after myself now. So we split. It wasn't a nice time. The kids were involved in terms of he broke through my window when my daughter was in the bath. He used to sit outside my house. He used to really stalk me. And I felt like I was going mad.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I then became a desperate person and kind of felt like, I felt back into that. This is what love is. This is what care is.
Yeah.
And became a completely different person.
Because that's when partners, and it's happened with me, when you're with someone that you love and they trigger insecurities, you become obsessed.
Yeah.
Literally completely obsessed to the point where you're cuckoo. And you're literally, and you'll question yourself, and then you're like, fuck, should that actually be how I feel? And then they love the fact that you're obsessed, because they know no matter what they do, they've just on a little string. Yeah.
And that, do you know what, it's so right, because that's exactly how I felt. I felt like I was, and I'd be like, I'm not doing that, but you'd end up just being caught up in it, and you do it, and I would send messages, I would feel desperate, I would just not even be the person that...
Do that one thing for them to go, oh, I really appreciate that, and you're like, oh, they love me.
Yeah.
And then obviously that's a codependent pattern as well.
Yeah, definitely. So that's how it was, and then I thought, I need to just complete break state, I need to be on my own. And I did a lot of internal work after that for quite a few years. I thought, right, shut off, just be me and find out who I am, because so much stuff, I didn't even recognise myself. And even when I separated from the marriage, what I found really hard about that was finding out what TV programme I liked. Because I didn't even know, because I'm so used to sitting down and watching what TV programme, do you know what I mean? It's like, well, what would I actually watch in my spare time?
Yourself.
What would I do in my spare time?
100%.
And I always felt like, but the one thing I have done is, so when we split, I'd left Budweiser at the time. I thought, right, okay, that was because there was a big, because of after all of the promotion and stuff, there was a big shift. A lot of it was outsourced. So I ended up getting another role, and I went for a bigger role. And that's kind of what I do. So when I've had a rubbish time or been in a relationship or something's gone wrong, I'm like, right, I'm going higher, because you told me that I was not going to amount to nothing, so I'll show you.
Yeah.
So I obviously went for a job, and I had a great time, and that was still within hospitality, because I've worked in that sector for a long time. So that was around big restaurant chains, Michelin star restaurants. We used to supply catering equipment to the biggest people in the industry. I'd go to fancy dinners, wouldn't think twice about spending these are £1,000 dinners. Do you know what I mean? You're having really nice food, really good wine. I was exposed to a different lifestyle. And I really enjoyed it, and it gave me that little bit of okay. And I'm all right, I've come all right. I've come from this person. I don't need to be imposter, because I'm working and I'm earning and I'm doing what I should be doing. And then I got a little bit. So I did that for a few years, and I thought, no, actually, I'm going back to the beer industry because I love it. So I did. I went back to the beer industry, and then I worked for Heineken, and that was a crazy time. That was a really, really good time. I loved it. We did, obviously, Champions League, Europa League with Amstel, FIFA, Formula One. I had accounts, up and down the country. Got to do some amazing things, festivals, concerts, meet people, all these football events. Yeah. We had boxes all around the different football grounds. I'd go in, I'd be VIP everywhere, and I loved it. I was living the dream, mate. Proper.
From fucking Holloway and Highway to fucking...
Yeah, literally living the dream. Yeah.
Love it.
And it was amazing. Some of the people I'd be rubbing shoulders with were do you know what I mean, all footballers and stuff like that. And I was like, and nobody would know. And I'd occasionally tell somebody, and I'd get oh my God, you don't look like an ex-offender. And I'm like, well, what does that look like?
You don't have the short back and spiky.
Exactly, yeah. And I suppose the way I spoke, back then I was a proper chav, do you know what I mean? Even reading some of my prison notes, I found them the other week, and I was like, who talks like that? Do you know what I mean? Like I was proper chavvy. Yeah, so then I worked, and then and then in 2019 I got hit with another blow. So obviously I won't give all of the details around it because it's not my story to tell.
Yeah.
But then in 2019 I was hit with another blow. So my daughter, which I won't discuss the story because it's kind of hers to tell.
Yeah.
But the police, I had a knock on the door. The police had turned up. There was 18 officers, and they wanted to search my property.
How old was your daughter?
At the time, she was 20.
18 police officers.
18 police officers.
Fucking hell.
They immediately put me and my children into a room and said they wanted my phone. They wanted our phones. I was, at this point, like, obviously I have my law degree and stuff. I was like, well, hold on a second. Let's have it right. Let's see this, and this. The road was just a mist of, like, there was a lot of unmarked cars. So they gave me the Section 18 and said, right, okay, there you go. We're gonna search the whole house. Yeah. I was like, what are you looking for? And they said, well, sorry, but she's an adult. We're not going to tell you that. And I was like, well, you need to tell me it's my gaff. And they were like, no. So they said, you can't use your phones or whatever. But anyway, after a couple of hours of searching, more officers turning up, they pulled out a sawn-off shotgun that was loaded and other ammunition. So long story short, she ended up getting a prison sentence. And she served. She'd gone from somebody that had never been in trouble before, not even had a detention, to this massive charge, which carries a minimum mandatory sentence. And she was put into prison. And my life completely came crashing down. Yeah. Like, regardless of whatever I've been through, all of the trauma in the past, nothing could prepare me for what happened and how I felt. I felt so powerless, would be the word that I would use, because everything else that had happened, I was in control of. So I, rightly or wrongly, even when I lost my way and got angry or whatever, and I lost, like, you get the red mist, that was my actions and I was in control of it. So I'd be in control of what would happen. I knew what was happening. But when this happened to her, she was the person that I loved most in the world, my child, and she suddenly met with this, like, massive thing. And she was an adult, so I couldn't be there to protect her. Yeah. And I couldn't be there at the... obviously, I couldn't sit in on interview, I couldn't do any of that, and I couldn't be there for her. As much as I could be there for her, I couldn't, and I'd have done that sentence for her. Do you know what I mean? 100%. I'd have taken it away from her. I'd have done it myself if I could. What's more heartbreaking is the fact of, like, your actions have caused your outcomes, and you've dealt with that. But when it's someone you love, and it's not you, and the pain is out of your control now, because the pain that you went through before was everything was down to you and your own that. However, when it's someone you love so much and you've brought into this world, it's mother's love. It's mother's love. And do you know what? There was nothing that can prepare you for it. And then to obviously see my other children suffer as a result of that was really hard. What did happen was my youngest daughter, she was taken into her dad's care for a period of time, and he wouldn't let me see her. Because he just felt that it was unsafe for her. And I can understand it to an extent, but it was 15 weeks was in total, and I didn't really see her. And that was, I'd lost, like, my eldest daughter, not lost her at that time because they put a tag on her ankle and she was out for that period. But I knew that there was a massive struggle and I had to be there for her. But also my little princess, I couldn't see her either. And I was being punished because of something. So I couldn't work, and I'd never taken time off sick. So I ended up saying, well, I just can't work. I need to take some time off. So I took some time off. And we kind of went through that court case, and she got sentenced a while later. Obviously, it was in the paper. It was all over Facebook, all over social media platforms. And then it was, I mean, I wasn't, I think where I suppose my resilience has come in, because before I didn't give a shit I did give a shit what people thought about me, because I always wanted to be better, or I'd never back down because of my reputation thing. I'd obviously done so well, and everyone was like, oh, you're doing so well and whatever, and it's great to see this. And everyone and I've had so much support along the way when I started to turn my life around, from people saying, do you know what, Lou, seeing this is amazing. But then when I had that happen with my daughter, I was just like, oh my goodness, like, you know, and I was just struggling with how to be. And I just thought, you know, I'm just going to, it is what it is. And I'm going to stand tall and I'm going to stand strong and I'm going to put my big girl pants on and just deal with this. So watching her go away was the most heartbreaking thing. When Group 4 took her, I was just like absolutely mortified because there was nothing I could do, nothing. And I walked out of there in a daze. And looking back, that whole time was a massive day. It was just like a big, like, horrible experience.
Because you know the exact thoughts that would have been going through her head in that sweatbox. You know, if anything, there'll be 100 times worse because, as you said in the car, like describing your daughter, she wouldn't say boo to a goose. Yeah. And whereas you was a little fucker. Yeah. So you in the sweatbox going into prison, you can hold your own. However, your daughter... Yeah,
she's not about that work. She wasn't like what I was like at that age.
She's got more chance of being a prison officer driving the fucking van to it than rather being in it.
Exactly, yeah. So we went into lockdown not long after. So she was in prison. She was, you know, I'd seen her and whatever, and then all of a sudden we got thrown into lockdown, and she did the rest of her sentence in lockdown. During that time, obviously, I hadn't worked, so I ended up coming across some people up in Liverpool that had an organisation that helped ex-offenders. And obviously the way in which algorithms work, I was looking for stuff and whatever, and then obviously you get these big signals and signs. So I did a bit of voluntary work for them. And then from that point, I ended up getting offered a job. So I became a chief operating officer. So like from prisoner to chief operating officer for a group of companies. It's like, oh my God, I've proper progressed now.
Always lands on your feet.
Yeah.
That is the mad thing as well. With the guests that have come on here, there's been some fucking savage stuff that's happened to them. Yeah. However, clean hearts always win.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Even the shit that you've been through, you probably, I can tell as well, like, you still would have done anything for anyone that you've known for 2 minutes. I knew you for 2 minutes. Yeah. I asked a fate, and straight away, with no questions asked, and that would have come from when you was a child, there's no different there. Yeah. So, clean hearts do always win. So, when you say anything, it doesn't shock me at all.
So so when obviously I got that job, and that was helping ex-offenders, so people that are coming out of prison, and that was when I was allowed. I kind of because I'd never told in my working history about my past, and that's, I always felt different. But I just thought, you know what, I'm here to do a job. I don't want people to judge me on my past. I'm here to be me. Although I did have internal battles throughout of it, and I would sabotage myself because things were going well. When I got that role, I was like, okay, I can start being open. And I tell you what, I put myself out on LinkedIn and said, I did some webinars and stuff and said about my past and being an ex-offender and all of that, and shared a bit of my story. And I don't think I've ever felt so nervous in my life, because I was like, right, if I do this, I'm burning my bridges on. And that was a big thing for me. It was like, right, because I'd done so well, I knew I could go and get a job in that industry. Yeah. That's not a problem. But if I go out and say, I'm an ex-offender, I've done this, and this, and share that story, if this doesn't work out, how can I go back into that industry? And it was a real daunting thing for me. And I thought, right, you know, I'm just going to have to bite the bullet. Because my life had changed, my priorities had changed because my daughter had gone to prison. And I thought, ultimately, what I want to be able to do is help those people, because when you come out of prison trying to find a job, it ain't easy. No. Do you know what I mean? You have to. Like, I've had to lie on some of my things, which obviously it's not the right thing to do. But back then, 20 years ago, or more than that now, 25 years ago, it wasn't the done thing. You know, and especially the stigma around women going to prison back then, it was just, you know, and also we didn't have as many checking tools then. It was like, I'd see a job in a paper, I'd there and my typewriter, do you know what I mean? Or
Listen,
my electric.
As I said in the car, lying on your CV is nothing compared to the fucking shit we have to put up with the media these days.
Exactly. So yeah, a little bit, and it wasn't lying. I just reword it. I like to reword it in a way that, like,
you're telling it in your own truth.
I'm telling it in my own truth from my map of the world. So I ended up, obviously, so I did it, and it was taken on really well. People engaged in it and said that they were quite, you know, they were inspired by my story. And I worked with them for a while, through 2020 and 2021. And what I loved about it was meeting people, because again, for me, working with people that have got adversity and have gone through pain and gone through stuff, because that's something that they have gone through. That doesn't take away from the person that they are.
Yeah.
And when you go through adversity and pain, it's really hard sometimes to see the wood for the trees. And especially with people, if they've been in prison, when they come out, you've got the stigma of when you come out, you've got to adjust first and foremost. Like, life is so slow in there, and you come out, it's fast, and you've got to deal with people. You've got to pay. You've got to buy stuff again. You've got bills to pay for. You've got all of this stuff to do, let alone having to think about going into work and going into that kind of thing. So it really did fit for me, and I really enjoyed it. And also, like, what I don't like the system as it is, because it's very archaic. That's because it moves really slowly. But even down to working with people on their CVs. So I've worked with drug dealers that have said, like, I ain't done a job. And I'm like, hold on a second, yes, you have done a job. So let's take away what you learn in your drug career and put that into paper on your CV, because
it's so fucking true.
You've built a business from
even the route that I went down. You know, when I was living in Ibiza, it was put money down, get your stock, you sell your stock, keep your profit, you put it down there, and it's literally that.
So it's a business at the end of the day, and it's like you've got
overheads.
You've got overheads to pay for, but what you do is you're starting a business.
Yeah.
You're building that business. You're aware of your competition, your competitors. You don't just work a 9 to 5. You work long hours. You put the work in and the graft in where it's needed. You're always aware. You're always alert.
We don't condone this, by the way.
We don't condone it. No, but what I'm saying is they're transferable skills.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree with you.
Yeah, when you put them on your CV. So that's what I end up doing, helping them. And I really enjoyed that. And I thought, actually, do you know what? This is for me. Because at that time, that was what it was, because of my daughter.
Yeah.
And then 2021 took another turn. And this is what led me into where I am now. And this was probably the hardest part of my life, of my journey. So in 21, I was with somebody, and I had real strong feelings for that person because I trusted them. And for me, growing up through trust, I've never trusted anyone. I've never allowed myself to be vulnerable or share in, I think, deeper feelings. So when I started to live in my authentic truth was when I started to do that job, because it was about me being who I am. And I was really early on at that point. So I was kind of nervous, vulnerable. I had so much to contemplate. And also, see, my daughter, my mum had got cancer again. And so I was with somebody, and I was planning to move away in the future to up north. I'd got rid of my dog. My mum had cancer. My mum had been battling cancer. And we did think at one point, obviously, she wasn't going to make it, because it was grade 4. It had been back a second time. It had attached to her lung, and we knew that it was going to be a really hard journey for her, a hard slog. And obviously, if you've ever suffered or ever watched anyone suffer with cancer, it's a really horrible journey to watch them. So she, bless her, she's a little Irish woman. She fought and prayed all of her life, and it's funny because I'm kind of a bit of I appreciate the universe. So although I'm a Catholic, raised as a Catholic, I'm very spiritual, and I have faith in the universe. Like, I believe in the law of attraction. I believe in like gratitude and incantations and all of that sort of stuff.
I do think a lot of people, they believing in a higher power,
absolutely,
is honestly, it's a godsend.
And my mum, that's what she did. So she had the cancer, and in March last year, she randomly, like, amazingly got it. She went into remission. They said that she'd beat the cancer, and it came at such a time. We were like, oh my goodness, she was really, really poorly up until that point. And in the February, I thought, she's going. Like, this time last year, I thought, she's going. And then in the March, she got the all clear, and we were like, oh my God, this is amazing. And she said, look, it's the power of prayer. I believe in the power of prayer is what helped me. So at that point, I thought, right, I'm going to get rid of the dog. I am going to make the move and go up north. And that's what we planned. We'd looked at a house. We were going to rent originally and whatever, and I was going to move the back end of the year. So I was excited for that part, and I thought, right, okay, I can now start picking up my life again and moving forward in this authentic truth. And then my mum, sadly, so in the beginning of May, with my partner and I had started to go through. I was feeling very tired and burnt out because I was up and down the country a lot, really suffering from burnout, which I didn't believe at the time. I didn't know it was, because it was like stress after stress after stress, and then and then we were separated in the very beginning of May, and I remember driving home so we broke up that weekend, and I drove home on the Tuesday thinking like, I don't want to be, I've had enough of this. And he obviously, we worked together, which wasn't a good thing. I thought, I just like this, I felt distraught. I remember crying the whole way home because I was so tired. It had been one battle after another. And I just think my body was saying like, you need to rest now. And then I got home, and I looked at my mum. The next day I got told, you need to go and see your mum. So I went and saw mum, and I walked in the door and I thought, that's not right. So I called the ambulance, and she blue lighted to hospital. She stayed in hospital a month, and then she sadly passed away exactly a month to the day that she was in hospital. She died of pneumonia in the end. So she'd beaten the cancer. And bless her heart, she always said it's not the prayers you say for yourself, it's the prayers that others say for you. And that's where it's about, willing other people to do well. Because if you will people to do well and not, and always want the best for them, then it manifests itself. And it's about being, being grateful and appreciating friendships that you have with people, because that's the most important thing.
It takes nothing away from your life.
Absolutely.
And I do believe it does work in the opposite way. You will... If you share your ideas, you will have people that will manifest a bad outcome for you.
Yeah.
But also, why shouldn't you share your dreams? To the world?
So, bless her heart, she passed away, and that was, for me, it was heartbreaking. It was she passed away in the room with me, so it was only me there, and she took such a decline in that month, and it was horrible. It was horrible to see, and obviously I'd split with my partner. So I'd split my partner in that week. I'd obviously given away my dog the month before. So a month I'd given away my dog, then I'd split my partner, then obviously I'd lost my mum. And
that dog would have been the one that would have just
it would have just been there. It would have been my mate.
It's crazy
what I mean?
to think that you have had a mental life, but it's the other people around you, bad things happen to them, affects you 100 times worse than it does what's happened to you.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been fucking stabbed and God knows what else, but your daughter going to prison and your mum passing away. Yeah,
and that was horrible. And then what I found out, so in between her passing away and the funeral, in that there was only a couple of weeks in between it, that my partner then had got somebody else that had moved in with her and her child. So that was just like a massive blow. I was just like, oh my goodness, what the fuck? Can I take any more? And I remember going back after the funeral. So sorry, I didn't find that out until after the funeral. So that had happened, and I knew that something wasn't right, but I could just tell there was, even as a friend, he wasn't there.
Yeah.
And then the funeral came, and it was just, I went back to work the following week after the funeral. On my first day back at work, I was kind of told that, where do I see myself? And I was like, well, I've been told by the doctor I'm suffering potential burnout. I need to just steady myself and stay still for 6 months and go through it. And I was told at that point that there isn't really a role for me. So that's the day after, the week after my mum's funeral, that I get told that. And then because I was like, well, let me see, I was then told by the other business owner that actually he'd got somebody else, that he'd moved in with her and her child, and didn't think that it was a good thing for me to be in the organisation anymore. So in the space of 2 months, obviously, I'd lost my mum, I'd lost my partner, and I'd lost my job. And I was just like, oh, mate, head was blown. Do you know what I mean? It was like, it was really tough, because I think the thing that hurt most was the trusting element, because I'd shared my past with somebody and I'd never done that before. Even my husband, I only knew bits of it, because some of it at the time, it was just like, block it out, block it out, block it out. And it's only as I got old and done work and stuff on it that I felt that I could talk about it. So he knew all of that. He knew my insecurities, knew that I'd always felt alone and whatever. So that really hurt. And then the job, normally you'd say, right, okay, if I split with a partner, I've got my mum to go to. Do you know what I mean? She'd give me a cuddle, make a cup of tea or whatever. And then if I had trouble with my mum, I had a partner to go to.
Yeah.
So because they'd both gone, I was like, right, I've got a job. I'm going to apply myself with my job. My first day back, my job had gone. And I'm just like that. fucking hell. And I do remember saying to the person at the time, because that there is something from that. The other business owner, I cannot stand with a passion, will never like, and it's not that I'm angry or bitter towards her, I just think that that's not a very nice person. And I said to her at that point, I never forget, I said to her, right, I was really upset, and I said, look, if you've got any more bullets in your gun, fire them now.
Yeah.
I said, because I don't want to, I'm on my floor right now, I'm on the floor, I'm at rock bottom, and I don't want you to have any more ammunition. That guy said, if you want to fire them now, because I don't want to get to my knees and then you shoot me again and then we fall back down.
You've had you've had momentum, but it hasn't just, continued. Yeah. There's been positive, 3 negatives.
Yeah.
Positive, 5 negatives.
Yeah. So I was like, right, okay. So anyway, I stayed with them and did like a thing for 3 months. But in the meantime, I'd found coaching. So I took a month of feeling really, woe is me. Like, I've had enough. Like, and I know it was some really dark times, and I actually thought to myself, do you know what, I'm better off not here. Yeah. Like, what have I kind of not got to offer, but what else is next?
Purpose.
Yeah, but more, it gets bigger each time. So what have I got to face next? And then I thought, it was weird because I sat there and I was wallowing for ages. And I thought, you know what, I just don't know what to do. I don't know whether to end it or I don't know what to do. And coaching kind of come from nowhere. And it was like, okay, let me have a look at that. And actually it was more like therapy for me. Yeah. And the minute there was a crystal that came into my life. I'm not going to lie, like, I'm going to have to put this out there for people that believe in crystals, but there's something called Moldavite. And I was told if it ever comes into your life, it will come in when it's ready and it will clear everything in your path. So that came in, I started pulling that card in my angel readings last year in the run up to all of this. And then when it happened, I thought, right, do you know what? I'd pulled it 5 times in the space of from November to March, and obviously it all started to go in March. I thought, well, I'm going to buy that crystal because whatever you've got, I want it cleared out, mate. I'm not going forward with it. So it kind of made a massive void, and I suppose I attached myself to it a little bit because I was like, right, it's cleared everything now. And I thought, right, I need to think about what I've done before. I need to pull myself up. How do I do that? I don't know how to do it. I had friends around me, but I did wallow. And then I heard something and it was like, it came to me, which was, and you've said it before, like, things don't happen to you, they happen for you. 100%. And I went and had a Reiki treatment, and she said, like, you've got basically, until you get a void, then that's when you'll find your purpose. And it was really weird because I had that void. And actually, like you mentioned earlier on about, did you not see that? That wasn't that like every time you get that thingy, you're meant to learn from it. And I didn't learn from that one because I was vulnerable at the time of Reese's passing. But this time I was just like, okay, I have learned all I need to learn now. In terms of, well, not all that I need to learn because you learn every day. But I've got the message now. Okay, okay, I've got it now. I can see it. So I've done a lot of internal work, discovered the power of coaching, decided to train to be a coach, and I've also done my NLP. So I did a good few weeks of immersion in NLP. Really went back to my childhood trauma, what I suffered with, broke it all down into bits, and I've worked through that myself. And it's weird because at the time I didn't think I'd ever get back up, and this time I feel like I'm up with a spring in my step this time. Do you know what I mean? Like the comeback kid. But no, I feel like this is me. I feel in fully alignment with my purpose now. And like, this is what I'm there to do, is to help other people that are struggling. And
that's it. So I've got goosebumps. So everything that you've been through is just always wondering about your passion. But I truly believe you find your passion, there's your purpose, there's your fulfillment.
Yeah.
And that's exactly everything that you have possibly been through that's built you up. I was going to touch on it earlier. I was thinking about, you're talking about them dark places.
Yeah. And
this podcast is about people that have been through real shit. People that have pretty much wanted to leave the world, and a success story. And you're definitely fucking that. So the dark times are sort of coming out of them for any women that have been in any domestic relationships, that are scared to leave because they don't know any different. is there sort of any tools that you had? Was there a way of thinking, or was it just everything just got too much? Because I know we've had Meg on here, we've had Tyler, and they've shared their stories of being in relationships with like abuse and stuff. And I just know it would be a powerful message if there is anything.
It's really difficult to say, is there one tool? Because when you're in a relationship, depending on what level of violence, if it's violence, then, and it's physical violence all of the time, then that's something you need to go and get out as quickly as you can, because that's not something that's ever really going to get any better. But when you're in a narcissistic, abusive relationship, you don't see it at the time, but your other people around you will see it. Yeah. They will notice the decline in you. They'll notice the change. You might not be, with your friends as much, or you might not be doing as much. You'll become withdrawn, and I suppose it's listening to those, but know that life, the people that are meant to be with you, the people that love you, aren't the people that hurt you. So it's really hard, because every situation is different, although there are similar patterns and traits, and we all believe that we can make that one difference. But we aren't Mother Teresa. Do you know what I mean? We're not Mother Teresa. And as much as we want to help somebody, the way sometimes you can help them is by leaving them, because they need to go on and do that inner work within themselves, and you can't carry that for them. But it would be domestic violence. In terms of physical violence, is get out, because you're not going to make that work. People don't want to be told what to do, and I think that's the thing with abusive relationships. You don't want to be told what to do, especially you want people to support you and not tell you what to do, because you're being told what to do. And a lot of the time you know it inside. You know that it's not right. You know that person doesn't really care or love you, but you want them to. And you touched on it earlier about that desperate, that point where you become obsessed, and you become desperate, and you want them to love you, because that's filling your void. But it's seek help as much as you can, and once you're prepared to do that, then that's where I would support everybody around getting some coaching. Is the most powerful thing you can have.
100%. And
also using techniques around what you do. So there's coaching to move you from where you want to be, from where you are to where you want to be. But with violence, and what I've had to do is I've had to go through Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and that is rewiring my brain, because we learn in different ways. And when we go through traumatic abuse, what happens is we don't file that away. So it sits there, and it sits in the back of a box, in the back of your brain, like a jack in the box, really, and it's buzzing away. And then what happens is you'll move forward, and then patterns will reoccur, because that's what we do. It's patterns, and it's recognising that pattern, and it's pattern utilisation. It's using that pattern to create a new pattern. So we will, when you go through that trauma, if you haven't processed it properly, it will reoccur, and it will reoccur, and it will reoccur. So when you're out of that, it's seeking help with a coach, and then find somebody that can work through those and rewire your brain to say that actually it's not acceptable, because everyone deserves. Love is about being happy and authentic in yourself, but love comes from you, and you have to fully love yourself before you can move on and love someone else.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So would you say now you're offering a service that you wish you had?
100%. Yeah, and because the human beings are capable of anything, and I think I'm testament to that. And I don't want to come on here and be motivational, because motivational in some ways is telling you what to do. I want to be inspirational, and I want to inspire people that regardless of what's gone on in your life, you can change it, and it does start with you. And it's about you changing your story, because if you change your story and the way you look at it and you reframe it, you can change your life.
Yeah, we literally have the power and the choice here. Like, you can wake up the next day, dress completely different, speak completely different, go into a completely different career.
Yeah.
You have the power there's no one that can say otherwise. You can go from overnight doing stuff you shouldn't be doing to waking up, putting another positive up to the world.
And that's what I've done in my life. It's taking on that new identity, but that starts within your state of mind.
Yeah.
But if you have suffered abuse, it's really hard to do that at that point, because you will feel your lowest that you felt, and you'll feel that you haven't got it within you, and that you're not worthy, but you absolutely are. But it's making those first steps, which are the hardest steps. But once you start to make them, surround yourself with good people and get in alignment, then you can do that, and you can become anything you want to be.
Fucking love that. Goosebumps. Wow. Wow. So I always ask my guests, Melior means for the pursuit of the better in Latin. Moving forward with your life.
Yeah.
How do you plan on pursuing the better?
So for me, I'm obviously my coaching business. So I'm helping people with trauma. So that's what I'm going to be moving forward with. And it's about going forward in my authentic truth and my authentic self. And it's helping people be happy with who they are. Because life is tough, right? And I'm going to be straight with you. Life is shit. We've got bills to pay. We're always going to have problems. But what I want to be able to do is help people have the coping mechanisms that are healthy to them, so that when a problem arises, they can deal with that problem in a way that is useful to them. So my coaching business, I'm also, because I've got, so my list of qualifications, obviously now that I've flicked, they are really high. So obviously I went on and did my law degree. I have got fashion design and stuff, but I've got criminology, criminal psychology. I've got communication across culture within business. So I studied the difference between group-orientated societies and individualistics. So that's around cultural. I mean, just an example is if there was an incident with, say, we as British say that actually you look somebody in the eye, that's when we give a level of respect. Yeah. However, in different cultures, actually looking somebody in the eye is a sign of disrespect, and it's making sure that different. So I've got those, and it's an awareness around that. Masters in international HR management, coaching. I've got international emotional intelligence. So what I'm doing is I'm condensing a load of courses, and I'm putting them onto a platform called Keeping Ahead. So that's going to be my business. The reason I've registered in Keeping Ahead is because two things. One, the positive connotation. It's about keeping ahead of people, keeping ahead of not people. So keeping ahead of. Yourself, being top of the game, being up there and top of the game, but actually it's also about keeping ahead, because that's the most important thing throughout it, is keeping ahead. So that's the plan, is to launch that. So I'll have 5 courses launched by the end of the year, and then I plan to do 30 courses next year. And on those courses, there'll be smaller courses, there'll be awareness. So it won't just be about coaching, it will be about how to help organisations, how they can help. So if somebody suffered domestic violence, what can an organisation do to be able to help that person? So their HR teams help that person that's gone through that. And also what I have got is I'm registering a foundation. So I've got my coaching business that helps people at the start of their journey, because ultimately people want to learn, but sometimes you're not in the right frame of mind. So working through them with my NLP techniques, the training business, and then I have a foundation, because the foundation is about giving back, and that part of it will be providing feeding the UK. So I want to be able to feed people with meals. So every course that they purchase goes into an amount of meals, and that gives given to the people in the UK, so that they can absorb that and get that nutrition that they need to be able to be best at their life. Because ultimately we need our senses to be fulfilled, our senses to be level, so that we could go on and be fulfilled and do stuff. So if they're eating, that's one of the senses that's, once you're hungry, once you're happy, you're full, you can go on and do things. And also to provide school uniform and school shoes for people that can't afford it. So, yeah, that's... A
lot is going to be in the pipeline.
I'm building an empire. But ultimately what it is about helping people, as many people as I can, and using my experiences and letting people know that whatever you've gone through in life, however hard it is now, there is a way in which we can move you forward, and you can be the best version of yourself. Yeah. And just, and there's support out there for people that need that.
Absolutely amazing. Fucking hell. I knew that was going to be inspiring for me, because as I said, I was going to learn about Lou properly, but that is, for a woman to go through everything that you've been through, and it's not just one little thing, it's massive amounts of life events. Yeah. And to get to a stage where you're like, so many negatives, so many people have done you wrong, so many people have led you down the wrong path, you want to dedicate the rest of your life now to helping other people. Yeah. And I think that is just, because a lot of people would go, well, I've wasted my life, I just want to go and make some money now, and I want to just go and do. However, your happiness now is by providing the service you wish you had, and by giving as much back to the world. And I think that just sums up what an incredible human you are, and I'm so privileged now to have you in my life.
Oh, thank you.
And to be surrounded, that is the exact energy I want to be surrounded by. And the whole point of this platform is to raise awareness for other people, and that is exactly what you've done. So if there is any women or men out there suffering with anything Lou's covered, which is pretty much fucking everything, her links and description to all of her websites will be in the comment section or in the caption, so please reach out to her. I'm going to be tapping her up for some coaching moving forward. So, yeah, Lou, thank you so much for coming down and sharing your story.
And thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, truly incredible. You've inspired me. Definitely, Larry would have been inspired. Absolute pleasure. As always, thank you for watching. Like, comment, share and subscribe. And as always, merely your fucking movement, baby.